so we're back. Thanks for joining me here tonight on Brain Purge. Thanks for joining me, Prankville, USA, Ken Boggle, Desert Rose, and David, the 5x5. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. So we're talking tonight on Brain Purge, what I just kind of got into. That's the great thing about this show. I never know what I'm going to talk about until I start the show. I just start rambling. So talking tonight about happiness and just how to be happy. And we're going to talk in a minute about the 10 basic ways, things you can do in your life to be happy, to find happiness. But before I do, I was saying before the break that I have always sort of been sort of aligned with Buddhism in terms of how I think and approach life. Not everything, and not on the religious side. The philosophical side. Can ask me what kind of Buddhist. I mean, not necessarily Hindu or whatever. I mean basically the philosophical idea of Buddhism, meaning one of the things that they teach in Buddhism is to take a path of non-attachment to things and not having attachment. And it actually says attachment is the origin, the root of suffering. Hence, it is also the cause of suffering. So a lot of people, especially in the United States of America or in the Western world, generally speaking, we are highly attached to not only things, but people and places and just everything. It's like we have a severe condition or something about being attached to things. So it's like we're raised in a very consumerist type environment or consumerist type of society. So where they tell you to buy everything you see on television, on in newspapers and magazines, on the internet, everything's buy. You need this. You have to have this. If you don't have this, your life will suck. If you don't have this, you'll never be the same person again. I mean, it's just like really a lot of shit you're trying to always being told to buy, right? And so, and it's fine to have attachments to things in a certain way, but I'll talk about that in a minute. What I think it's saying, what I feel it says, and what I agree with anyway in that tenet of Buddhism is that if you have attachment to someone or something and you allow those things to control you, you allow those things to make decisions for you. For example, whether you're going to move away or whether you're going to, Nam yo renge kyo, nam yo renge kyo, nam yo renge kyo. Sorry, Ken. So anyway, what was I saying? Shit, I lost my track of thought. Oh, so yeah. Anyway, so having attachments to someone or something is always sort of the evil of our society. Because if you look at the people, for example, especially before the bubble burst in like 2008 here in the United States, people were buying. My God knows I was making $1 billion a year in 2007, tons and tons and tons and tons of money. But I wasn't stupid enough to fall for the idea of attachment. We're meaning like people buy houses they can't afford, people buy cars they can't afford, they buy clothes they can't afford, they buy shit, right, to make them feel whole or make them just keep up with the Joneses or whatever, right? And so they do these things because some people think it's going to make them feel complete to have the latest fashions or to have the nicest car, the nicest house, or whatever the case may be. The things that are all external from the person that is actually doing these things. These things are all outside of ourselves. They're all outside of who we are. They have really very little to do with who we are inside. And so I think that that people need to realize when you are a slave to the things that you own, when you're a slave to attachment, and it could be to a person as well. It can be to having an obsession about someone, whether it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, someone you met online, or whatever. Those things hold you back from really fulfilling your full potential as a human being. That's what I feel. That's what I think, and that's how I really see. Things, right? So I think that if you remember that when you're doing things, you won't get into trouble. And a lot of people get into trouble and have foreclosed houses, or they buy things they can't afford or whatever because they're trying their hardest to keep up appearances. And I think that is the biggest trap in the world, to fall into that. As is evidenced by many people. I'm sure all of us since 2008 have known people who have been foreclosed on or have lost their job and have had a hard time of it, or have had a really hard time, right? And It's not to say that they're guilty of this necessarily, but a lot of people in that time frame were just caught up in the buying frenzy, and I think people still are today. So hopefully people will take that to heart and know what I'm talking about when I say that. So so there are 10 things you can do to be happier, and there's 10 things you can do. One of the things you can do is to giving to people. Giving to people makes you feel better, makes you feel happier about yourself, makes you feel like you're doing something for the world and helping to change the world to make it a better place. Giving also, of course, helps the other person somehow, whether you're giving to charity or you're giving to a friend or whatever. You just have to remember not to give so much of yourself that there's nothing left for you. A lot of people fall into the trap of giving, and never getting anything back, whether they're giving something to someone as a friend and they are there for them to talk to all the time and listen to them speak and whatever, and they're never there for them in return, or someone's loaning you money, you're loaning somebody money and they never pay you back, or they never loan you money when you need it, or whatever. So it's basically a reciprocal thing. If you're getting a reciprocal, type of a relationship with someone, then I think it's worth it. But if you're a one-sided giver, then it's not good, and that's not going to lead to happiness. It's going to lead to resentment, in my opinion. So I think that's what people need to remember. Also, just relating to people, like connecting with people. I think when we have the internet, it's also really hard for people to remember, like we're like human beings, and you have to actually, sometimes actually take time to actually connect with people, human beings, whether it's on the phone or whether it's on even the internet. I think you can connect to people in some ways, of course. But I think, sitting down and actually talking to people. I know, like, when I was younger in the 80s and stuff, when I was like a little kid, whatever, I remember people actually communicated differently. It's like people today don't sit down and actually have a conversation anymore. They're always on their fucking phone. You're talking to somebody and they're sitting there talking to you on their phone or whatever. That's so fucking rude, which I hate that. Somebody's talking or looking on their phone or whatever, or texting or something like that while you're trying to talk to them is really rude. And there's been this sort of electronic wall or whatever put up between people since I was a kid, since, the coming around of technology and everything with smartphones and, whatever. So in the internet. So I remember when I was a kid, we would sit down and have conversations with people. Like, I'd go into a room and with my friends or my family, whatever, and we would actually sit there and talk. I mean, talk, okay? Actually have a conversation. And today people are so distracted by the computer or by the internet or whatever. How many of you can actually sit down and not be on the internet for an entire week? Not use your phone, not use your computer, your laptop, no television, nothing. I bet all of you or all of us would go through some type of withdrawal, especially the people that I talk to on the show a lot, because I know all of us come on here almost nightly to do our shows or to be on people's shows and talk to them or whatever, or we're tweeting or we're on Facebook or whatever. So how often do you have to really be on there? And there's actually a condition, I can't remember what it was called, where people actually have a condition where they can't actually even look away from their fucking computer or from Facebook. They check Facebook like every 5 minutes, or they check their email every 5 minutes, or their text just every 5 minutes, right? So I don't know if I know that I could do it. I could do it, but the entire time I would feel anxious, and I would feel like I would be, I'd be insane. I'd have to be reading a book or whatever, which I want to read on my iPad, which is electronic. So I'd have to read like a book like you hold in your hand, because all the books I read now are like on my iPad. I don't even read books by hand, the old kind paper anymore. I have tons of them, but I don't read them, unless I need to refer to them for something. So don't you think that's a problem, though, for us as human beings? That means all of us have an addiction. If we can't go a week without feeling anxious or wondering what's going on through those things, then we have an addiction. So all of you need to admit that you are addicted to the internet, or to technology, I should say, to technology. I admit that I'm addicted to technology, okay? I admit it. I am a technology addict. So my name is Iconoclast, and I am a technology addict, okay? So it is something that I think people need to actually remember, that we are human and we need to connect in the real world. So it's just as good as it is to be on the internet all the time, and as good as it is to have all this technology, we need to actually go outside occasionally, which I never do unless I have to, unless I'm going somewhere or something. We need to go outside. We need to actually get exercise. We need to actually like commune with people in person. And the other question is, like, how many of you know your neighbors? Like, how many of you know your neighbors? You all live somewhere, right? So whether it's your neighbor, you know, to your left, your right, if you're in an apartment or downstairs, upstairs, if you're in a house, you know, neighbor on the other side of you or whatever. Do you not know your neighbors in this day and age? I think it's very normal. Most people these days don't. And I know a few of my neighbors, but there's like 4 or 5 gay people on my street. And so I know all the gay people on my street, I think, but we don't actually hang out or talk or anything like that. But when we're out and about, if I'm walking the dog or I'm driving down the road or something and I see them, I'll wave at them. They'll wave at me. We're cordial, whatever, right? But don't you remember the days when people actually used to actually talk or sit on their front porch and actually like talk to neighbors walking by? How are you? What's going on? Blah, 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 you know? So to me, it feels like something's been lost in all of this technology. There's this humanity that's no longer there to me. It seems like it's missing from humanity. So I don't know what you feel about that, but that's another way to be happy, is to actually relate to people in a real way. Third way to be happy is from this list I'm reading from here. This list is from, by the way, from actionforhappiness.org. 10 keys to happier living, is exercising. And I agree with that as well. You know, taking care of your body can make you happier. You know, I just told you earlier that I did P90X earlier tonight, and I'm starting back on that again. And every time I hate, first of all, I have to say, I hate exercise. I hate it. Hate it with a fucking passion. I think it's the most god-awful thing in the world. I never enjoy it while I'm doing it.